Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Everything Scuba. That's Josh.
This is Lyell. Lyell and I are scuba instructors here in the Midwest.
We sure are. We're very passionate about scuba diving. We want you to find your passion right here on Everything Scuba. So, if you're a diver, you want to learn more about diving, if you want to learn how to dive, this is a great resource to come visit. So, check out the channel, click the subscribe button, ring that notification bell. Don't miss out on upcoming episodes. So today, we are going to talk, this is the first in a series of videos that we're going to put together on full face mask diving. It's kind of a cool way to dive, right?
It sure looks cool, especially in the cold water that we dive.
Yeah.
I am not full face certified yet. Hopefully this weekend
We're going to rectify that.
Yeah. Whenever Lyell gets to dive, especially things like rescue class that we do often in the fall when the water is getting pretty chilly, that looks very nice.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm a full face mask certified instructor. Other reasons to dive full face mask, we work with a lot of EMTs, policemen, firemen, personnel that are going to become safety divers. This is definitely a necessary piece of equipment. There's some nuances and differences obviously between having a rag in your mouth versus not. Also, warm water divers. Part of the reason that talked my wife into this piece of equipment was you can put a microphone inside here. You can communicate with each other by actually chatting under the water. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Yeah, we'll figure that out. But today, first episode, we're going to talk about the OTS Guardian full face mask. So Ocean Technology Systems. Great company that produce a variety of different full face mask options. This is the one in particular that I like to dive. So we're going to take you over to North Iowa Scuba. I'm going to give you a walkthrough on that. And then in subsequent episodes, we'll talk a little bit about the Spectrum full face mask that OTS produces. And then we'll talk about the certification process. How do I go about working with an instructor to become certified in using a full face mask? Much like Josh is going to learn with us this weekend. We don't recommend you just go out, buy one, and throw it on and jump in the water. Definitely need to be safe about it and know what you're doing. So hang in, we'll check that out. Alrighty, welcome, welcome. Hey, so today we're going to take a look at the Ocean Technology Systems OTS Guardian full face mask. A very cool piece of equipment. I love diving this full face mask, particularly in cold water. Really keeps me nice and toasty underwater. So first I've just laid out a little bit about, okay, if I purchase one of these, what do I get with it? What comes with the system? So first of all, obviously you get the face mask itself. OTS provides the second stage regulator and the low pressure hose. There's a little bit of a modification I've made here. This is a 360-degree adjustable connector that I put in line, and we'll talk a little bit about why I have that on there. But that was separate that I added. Right here we have multiple little platforms. These are nasal blocks, and then there's a little wire here that inserts into the face mask. I already have mine installed, but this is just an accessory one in case you had to. This is how this all mounts together to allow you to equalize in the initial stages of descent with this mask. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about that. Then we get this little tool, which obviously allows you to make some adjustments on regulator or attachments here. But most importantly, it's got these little weird notches in the tool. And what that's useful for is on the side, there's a little valve that can be unscrewed and removed. So into this you can place a microphone, and OTS makes a couple of different communication systems, which makes this pretty cool underwater, particularly for those safety divers. If they need to talk to the surface, talk to other divers in the water, they can do so through this port. But this little guy fits just like so. I don't know of any other tool out there that allows me to make that adjustment, so don't lose this. Might be a valuable piece of equipment if you ever had to work with that part. It comes in a nice padded bag. Has some drainage ports at the bottom of the bag, so you put a wet face mask in there. It's got a way to drain out, but it's nicely padded. It's gonna, certainly protect the that piece of gear for you. So, I'm gonna move some of this stuff to the side. Just we don't need those anymore, and we'll talk a little bit about the different main features of this mask. So looking at the front of the mask, obviously it's got a nice big wide, I describe it as almost like wearing a picture window. It's a polycarbonate lens, so plastic polycarbonate. The downside for that, for me, is we've done a previous program looking at prescription dive masks and how we put prescription lenses in there. With polycarbonate, you can't bond a prescription lens to that plastic, and so that makes life a little bit more complicated, but OTS actually makes a nice little system that allows you to modify the mask so you can put lenses in there, and I'm going to show you that. This is my mask. I do wear prescription lenses while diving it. On the front here, we have the port into which your second stage inserts. We'll take a look at the back side of that. On the side, we've already talked about this little guy. This valve will unscrew, comes right out. Now you've got an opening into which you can insert a microphone, which again is going to sit right beside your mouth, pick up underwater signals pretty nicely. Very rigid plastic polycarbonate, glass injected, really tough stuff around the face shield here. On the side here, we have kind of a unique feature potentially to this mask. This is the ABV, or ambient breathing valve. So you're in the water, your second stage is clicked in place. You don't want to have to suck down your air at the surface as you're swimming to the dive site. And so this actually allows you to draw air in from the ambient surface air to breathe from. You won't activate your regulator and use up your air. So obviously we go through a check system before we descend. It becomes part of that 5-point descent. We're just going to add in that we have to close our ABV, ambient breathing valve. We don't want water pouring into our mask as we descend. And so that's kind of the features on the front of the mask. On the back side here, we've got a 5-point harness that straps to your head. If you've ever seen the movie Alien, it's kind of like that thing that grabs hold of that guy's head. So when we do our certification class, we kind of walk through all the checkpoints and systems that we need to go through to make sure that our gear is intact and ready to go. And then when we don the mask, specific protocol that we go through to tighten this down and not over tighten it and make it uncomfortable. I'm going to move these out of the way. One of the really cool features about this mask and why I think it's so comfortable to wear is this has a double seal right here, and very soft silicone material. Feels really good against the face. I've had some divers tell me that they like to put this against their hood. There are some types of hoods out there that have a non-compressible portion. I've tried it a couple times. I can't get a good seal, so I want this sitting against my skin. My hood will then come over the edges of that. On the bottom, chin cup here, so your chin seats nicely into this. So it's really, I mean, it certainly has a little bit of weight and heft to it at the surface, but once you're underwater, it's a really comfortable thing to wear. On the inside here, we have the oral nasal pocket. Obviously, mouth, nose sits in here, almost like a fighter pilot's mask. Kind of sits nicely against the face here. And I'm going to move some of this rubber out of the way so you can see inside. So these are the nasal blocks that we talked about. These are actually removable. You can pop them loose and pull them out. We've got the little cage system that holds the blocks in place. So each diver, obviously your face is unique and individual as to how tall your face is and where your nose is going to sit. So you will play with this to get to the right point. So what this does is my two nostrils sit just above these two blocks. I can still breathe in and out of my nose, But as I descend, during that initial 10 to 15 feet especially, I can actually apply pressure on the outside of the mask, push it upwards against my nostrils, against my face, and so it blocks my nostrils. I can then Valsalva against it, and it allows me to clear my ears. I've never been one of those divers where they can just simply swallow and swallow and swallow, and my ears will equalize. However, with this mask, I find once I'm through that initial 10 to 15 foot of descent, this actually is much easier to equalize because your entire face, nose, and mouth are held at the ambient pressure at which you're diving. And so because you're at depth, obviously that's a greater pressure. I find after the first 10 to 15 feet, if I swallow, it's simply that pressure of air is able to open up my ears and equalize. And so this actually is much easier. I was certainly concerned about that when I first learned to dive it. Some divers certainly have a lot of questions about it, but I would ease your fears there and tell you that it's easy to equalize in this. Another really cool thing about this face mask is when you inspire air, the air is actually drawn up over the visor of the face mask. You don't have to defog this mask because you're constantly drawing air over it. You're not going to get condensation settle in there. At the surface, you can. I've noticed, particularly after a dive, I'll come back up to the surface. If I pop open my ABV, it now allows a little bit of moisture in there, and it may fog a little bit at the surface. But underwater, it clears up very quickly, so you don't have to gum up the works by putting a bunch of defog inside the mask. Back to the oral nasal valve mask here. You'll see a rad button right about there, if you can see it. This little rad button is a release point that will allow your second stage to be pulled off of the mask at the end of the dive. You cannot physically remove that second stage during the dive unless you somehow have the ability to sneak up inside of there and pop it open, which I just don't see that happening, or why would you? A unique feature, can't pull that regulator off until you actually pull that off of there. So we'll pull that back over to that point. If you had a microphone in here, it would sit just to the right side of your mouth. You can see that's the valve that we would remove, and the microphone would sit right there, and you can kind of adjust the positioning to get the best possible signal. Inside the top part of this, you can see this little guy that's sticking down from the top. If I fold this back, you might be able to see there's a little rail here and here, and it goes all the way over to the side and inserts into two built-in rubber inserts. And so this is the component of the accessories that you can buy to allow you to place prescription lenses in the mask. So this rail can be adjusted for height and width within there. I have a separate pair of prescription lenses. I just took this to my optical shop when I purchased it. I think the entire little kit was about $80, and the cost of the lenses that I put in there. But there's two little prongs. You can see there's two little holes right here. So this guy just inserts into the top, and we just push that in place, so it's going to be secure. Even if I took my mask off underwater, those aren't going to fall out. You can just adjust the position, and they work really well. Certainly from the outside, might look a little goofy, but for me, it allows me to see underwater, and I don't have obviously the option to bond the lenses inside of there. So this little harness system works really well for me. So if you are a diver that needs prescription, you certainly have an option with this mask. With the Spectrum mask, which we'll also have a review on, those are glass lenses. You could bond lenses to that mask if you wanted to. And so we'll talk about that when we review it. I'm going to take these guys back out for just a second. We'll set those to the side. Overall, a really nice mask. With your second stage, obviously it's going to come over your right shoulder, and As I alluded to, I actually put a 360-degree rotatable connector on here. It adds maybe one little failure point. I've had one O-ring go bad in this before a dive, thankfully, not during the dive. But the thing I like about this is, I'll show you once we have it inserted, it just allows a little bit more freer range of movement. If I turn my head or look up, look down, if it's a straight connector, sometimes it may have the tendency to want to pull on your mask. I find this works really well. Some divers also will place a longer low pressure hose on here and bring it under their arm instead of over their shoulder. And so again, if it's coming from this direction, it's going to allow them to have a little bit more flexibility and movement. So to insert this guy, it's simply place it into that opening, and you're going to push until you hear it click. And it's a nice firm click. Double check it. Your exhalation port is right here, and you have a purge valve on the side of the regulator. So again, it looks a little bit of a different configuration to maybe what some of us are used to. Generally, what I do when I first don my face mask, obviously I'm going to do all my pre-checks, looking at the mask, make sure it's not damaged, everything looks good. And then I'll pop my regulator in or breathe the regulator, close my ABV valve so that I can actually activate the regulator, make sure it's behaving itself, doing what it's supposed to do. And then I'll take this off. Many times if we're not getting in the water right away, I'll take this guy off and I'll simply remove the regulator from the front of the mask, and that way it allows me to talk out of the front space. It's a pretty tight fit. But what you will find with full face mask is it's kind of hard to communicate with other divers when you've got this thing on. There's a lot of insulation here. You're kind of yelling through the mask to actually talk to one another. So as I walk to the dive site, I'm maybe going to hang on to this guy, and as I'm ready to get in the water, we're finished communicating, then we'll slip that, click it in place, rebreathe it, make sure we're all good to go. So that's just a quick review of the OTS Guardian full face mask. What do you get with it? What are some of the features? Highly recommend it. If you're a cold water diver, if you're used to dry suit diving and you're tired of your lips freezing off and being really cold, I've worn this in the Caribbean. Again, it's like wearing a picture window on your head. The view that you get out of here is phenomenal. If you're a public safety diver, we work with a lot of EMTs, police, firemen that are working towards public safety. This is an absolute necessity for them, and particularly with communication systems. They can talk to the surface, they can talk to fellow divers. So one last thing to cover, guys, is we talked a little bit about the accessory to put prescription lenses inside of here. There are multiple other accessories that OTS makes. There's a little rail so you can put a headlight on here. You can mount a GoPro. Just a phenomenal selection. Actually have a friend who runs another YouTube channel called Triton's Realm. I'm going to leave a link to that right now. Go visit Triton's Realm YouTube site. Jeff Dykstra, great diver. He and his family make a selection of videos. They wear OTS Guardian full face mask. He has a communication system in it, so he'll narrate the video. You'll see him diving with a GoPro attached as well. So great videos, really beautiful images. He's a outstanding underwater photographer and videographer, but uses this system primarily. So check that out. If this video was useful to you, please give us a like. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and we've got a bunch of other full face mask videos upcoming here. We're going to talk about the full face mask certification process, what's involved in that, and we'll also review OTS's other full face mask, the Spectrum. So join me next time.